Feel like that the feeling or the experience of being stuck is a really common experience. And the reason I think I laugh a little bit when I think about it, when I inquire into being stuck, is because that is a painting of the illusion of being stuck as what we think we are, rather than living as that beingness or isness. Because as what you are, you can't be stuck. Everything that's stuck, stagnant, or seems to be immovable is what you're not. It's part of the contents that's being experienced. Stuckness is being experienced. So stuck in a job, stuck in a relationship, stuck in a set pattern of habits, let's say. Yeah. That's interesting, because if you look at it from an addiction point of view, then yeah, really a lot of the addictive patterns are habit patterns. Feel a certain way, the habit is to then move into this other action, being substance abuse. It becomes a habit pattern. It's not a habit pattern of awareness or beingness, because that has no, there's nothing for a pattern to grab onto as what you are. So where the addiction really lives is in the mental system, which we know from recovery programs. And then if I'm living as that mental system, I'm living as the one who's addicted. The same way as if I'm living as the mental system, which feels like it's stuck in a position. Yeah, I feel like I'm stuck, or I am stuckness. But that's the illusion. See, it comes from the identification with the system that can feel stuck, which is not you. That's the importance of seeing that you're not the self, the small s self, as they would say in recovery, self, being that idea of being the individual, body, mind, separate from everything else. Now that has a lot of experience of stuckness, because it's always in this duality. And it's running on concepts, it's running on form. Form in this case not just being the body or the chair, for instance, but form being thought forms, forms of sound. Forms take many forms in the Buddhist sense. And if we're identified as one of those forms, being the thought, there's going to be separation, and there's going to be feelings of stuckness. We're looking at how do I get out of a situation, or how do I get out of what I'm stuck in? The reality of the truth is that you're not in it in the first place. It's the mental that's in it. So by seeing that you're not what is stuck, being the self, the concept, the forms of the mind, you see you're not that, then you don't feel stuck. You see the self, the manifestations of self experiencing stuckness, but you don't identify as the one who's stuck. So there's a lot more options to look at. Your view of being stuck is much wider than just living as the one who thinks they're stuck. It comes back to the same idea. You're not in it. You were never in the stuckness. As usual, it's rooted in that identification. I really like what Gangamira says when she speaks. She says, land nowhere. Yeah, land nowhere. Because even being identified as beingness itself means that there's something experiencing the beingness, and now I'm just stuck to oneness rather than two-ness. Still stuck. It's like handcuffs, but they're golden, you know? I'm no longer stuck in the addictive pattern, but now I'm stuck in the pattern of being a spiritual practitioner, and now I'm addicted to meditation, let's say. Stuck. You're not stuck. The mental, the self, is what's experiencing the stuckness. But if I'm listening to that and following it, if I'm putting all my faith into that, then my experience of life is going to be stuckness. And if I'm not stuck here, then there's something over here which I feel is grappling me too much. The thing is, it's not the here or there, it's the identification, the hard attachment to the selfness, the movement, the activity of the head. So that's why the importance in Advaita Vedanta or in Zen or Chanya is that you're free right now. You're free right now. We just need to settle down the movements, the chitta vrittis, as they say in yoga, or the samskaras, the habitual patterns of the mind. See them clearly, and then you'll see what is perceiving to be stuck, and then what is free from that stuckness. Now we can call the freeness beingness, Buddha nature, God, whatever. But to put a name on it is compressing it down too much. So I don't really know what that is. I don't know. As I'm just speaking about experience because I feel like it's so valuable. Yeah. So rather than try to change the cognitive, which feels stuck, just see that you're not it, and then realize that you're never stagnant. You're never stuck anywhere. Because it's often that feeling too of being stagnant or being in a position that you don't want to be in, which causes all of this movement, this pushing and this like overworking in our lives to get out of a place that we're not even in. It's like you can spend your whole life accruing things, building and gaining and gaining. And then what happens later in life? You have all this stuff and now you're stressed out. Because if you're living as the mental system who's gaining all kinds of stuff, now you're stuck, seemingly stuck with all of these things, and you have to maintain them. So where's the freedom in this? Because the things didn't give you the freedom. They didn't unstick you from the discomfort, or the feeling of needing more or needing to get out of. The things didn't do it. So the busyness didn't get you there. And then if we're to get rid of all of that busyness, we're still left with the system which says, ooh, I feel uncomfortable now, I don't have enough. Now I'm not living in the right place. And then from that system of self, it views the future as such a solid thing. It views the future as like, it's like, how am I going to set myself up for a comfortable future? Where am I going to be when I'm 50 and 60? Now, see, that's definitely the mental, because none of that's happening right now. That's literally the head just projecting. I have to set myself up so that I'm secure in the future. Now, coming from addiction recovery, the future is a really... If I'm always looking at the future, then I don't lose awareness of the now, because I can't, because you are the now. Yeah, but it becomes a little bit veiled by the head always looking for more to get out of the situation that it's in or prepare itself for the future. What happens from an addiction standpoint, in my experience, is when I start doing that, the head starts getting anxious. Yeah, I'm no longer living one day at a time. Now I'm looking like 15 years in the future. And then the mental patterns, because of the anxiety, starts again to feel, ooh, I feel like I'm stuck now in this anxious now by looking at the future. Neither are you, but if you're living as the head, it's going to pull you. And then the issue becomes, well, I need to get out of this anxiousness, which is being experienced now. Now, if you're addicted to a substance and you're trying not to use that substance, that anxiety is not very helpful to not use that substance. But do you see what caused the anxiety in the first place? It's being stuck to this idea of a self, and where is it going to be in 15 or 20 years? How am I going to secure its place in 15 or 20 years? Assuming, by the way, that you're going to get that far as a body. Yeah? Yeah, if we're tied to the self, we're tied to the idea of being a separateness, and we're always kind of searching for that security. But the security itself is an illusion, because life is changing moment by moment all the time. This idea that we're in complete control of what's going on, it's like, do you really feel like you're beating your heart? Or do you feel like you're the one who causes blinking to happen, or all the nerves in the body to function? I love in recovery, they talk about unmanageability a lot. The unmanageability of life. Life becomes unmanageable only when you're trying to manage it. You see? It's when you're trying to control life as a manager, it becomes extremely unmanageable, because of course life is unmanageable. There's so little actual control that we have, even of what's happening inside the body. So if I'm really attached to this idea of separateness, of J-ness, and J's mental patterns and all the manifestations that come with that J-ness, if I'm really attached to that, I'm going to try to manage it. Now, the attachment to the idea of there being a J is a stuckness in itself. So if I'm living from that stuckness, I'm going to try to manage it, and that makes life unmanageable. More so, it proves life's unmanageability. Because rather than being able to flow with what comes, yes, living from a true stance of what you are, let's say the beingness, for lack of a better term, there's a fluidity there, because I'm not living as just the body and the mind, so I'm not completely trying to control that. So if things alter, they alter. It's like you hear more clearly on what's going on, because there's not this tight attempt to manage what's happening in life. You try to manage, it becomes unmanageable. Feel like the trying to manage life is turning water into an ice cube, and then identifying as the ice cube, as if the ice cube isn't part of the water in the first place. Now, the only thing that can feel stuck in a position, a job, an identity, a place to live, this, is the ice cube. Is that selfness. You see, because the stuckness isn't moving like a river. It's trying to stagnate itself. Now, there's nothing there that is that solidness. It's an idea that gets solidified by complete repetition, boom, 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 of the thought pattern, and constant identification of that thought pattern. So rather than trying to change that movement in the mental, which isn't really going to alter that much, we can change patterns, but I've even read very famous psychologists who said, the baseline of what you are is the baseline of what you are as a body and a mind. It's not going to alter. So we can change things a little bit, Yeah, we can manipulate the ice cube a little bit, maybe, but it's not going to free you from the stuckness, the ice cubeness. And it's beautiful. Like, how can we not love that? How can that not be good news that you are not what is feeling stuck or what is perceiving to be still or stagnant? You're not in it, and you don't need to get out of anything. It's really beautiful because now, from what you are, everything is an option. Changing jobs is an option. Moving places is an option. At any point, any moment. It's all, everything is an option. You know, if you're an artist, the creativity opens wide open when you see that you're not stuck to that self. Because again, everything becomes an option. It's almost like there's no bad ideas. From a creative standpoint, there's no bad ideas. Which is beautiful, because the thing that says some ideas are bad is the mental system. And there's nothing wrong with the mental system. We need that to survive. It's beautiful in its own sense. But what we're talking about here is a real relief. And letting that mental system operate how it's supposed to operate. Because as most, if we're living as the head, we're stiffening that mental system a lot. And it's not getting its free movement. So even when I say something is good or bad, it's a really stiff perception of that from my identification as it. Whereas if we were to allow the mental system to operate freely as an experience within what we are, let's say, yeah, then it really kind of moves more fluidly, much more efficiently. Much more efficiently. So the one who's stuck in depression, that's not you. Being stuck in anxiety, not you. Being stuck in a position in life, not you. These are all labels. These are all things that are experienced. You see? Beautiful. You're not what's feeling stuck. See that. See the movement. Disentangle from what's causing the attachment to that movement. The movement will settle down. The feeling of stuckness will soften because you're not buying it anymore. You're no longer paying its wages, so it stops working in a way. That's a good way maybe to look at that self, that attachment to self, the mental system, the individuality, is by constantly listening to it and living from it, we're paying its wages, meaning we're keeping it alive, keeping it thriving in that way. So it's not moving fluidly. But if you see you're not it, you stop paying its wages and it stops working. And then we get much clearer view of life as it's happening right now, rather than reaching for there or reaching back to the past. Because both of those are the same system, the same mental system in the self, which feels stuck in whatever it feels stuck in right now. You are not the stuckness. We only get caught in it when we listen to it, we put our faith in that mental movement.